Well, mainly it's that he likes the Adventures matchup, and Adventures has been one of the strongest decks over the last 6 months. So if you like the Adventures matchup, then seems like a good choice to me.
Okay, well, he's got an Adventures matchup of sorts here. He's playing against the Mirror, and let's get underway here in our Eliminator match. Again, I'm going to remind you of the stakes. The winner gets to continue through the tournament here. Now, they are also not done with their day with a victory. It's just merely the first step towards finishing in that top four and putting themselves in the World Championship. But the loser, well, they're going home. So this is everything on the line for our players. We've got Yespera Sentinel to kick things off. Was that a mulligan there for Nettles? No.
Yonn did mulligan.
Yonn mulliganed. Okay. They both kick things off with Yespera Sentinel, I should say. There's Edgewall, Innkeeper, Fabled Passage, Fire Prophecy here. Wow, look at this. Giant Killer to draw a card here. Logan looking for the land drops, but he's just going to have to play that Fabled Passage after he finds the Crowan War off the top of the library. He's got Isika's Chariot, double Fire Prophecy as he passes the turn back with Giant Killer, Edgewall, Innkeeper, and he has Yespera Sentinel on the battlefield. Tangled Florahedron is all that Yonn can muster here for his turn 2.
Yeah, I mean, both these players kind of showing how much the Naya deck can just put a bunch of stuff onto the board. And that Giant Killer for 1 mana is actually just part of the reason the deck is strong. It's just a really strong play.
Look at this, another red source off the top of the library here for Logan, opening up a lot of doors for him. He has a Crowan War or a Sika's Chariot if he'd like to try to just get aggressive. But he can also double Fire Prophecy if he just wants to knock Yonn from, potentially having 4 mana down to just 2.
Pretty interesting play, because either it's you play a 4-drop and give Yonn the opportunity to play a 4-drop, or you make it so neither of you plays a 4-drop in this turn rotation. I think given how much the 4-drops kind of give value to the people who are ahead, I wouldn't be surprised if Chariot's the play here.
And that is exactly what happens here. Luis Logan Nettles opting to go for one of the most powerful options we've seen in Standard. Isika's Chariot has become an absolute staple and is responsible for a lot of victories. It is one of those cards that has the impact on the game like you and I have talked about with this, where the pendulum swings back and forth, right? One player plays something, and all of a sudden it feels like they're way ahead, but by the time it's their turn again, their opponents had a chance to use up all of their mana, and now they're way ahead. And we see haymakers going back and forth here as Showdown of the Scalds hits for Yonn Morris Merkel before passing the turn back. Now he's got access to a lot of stuff there, a couple of lands, a Tangled Florahedron and a Fire Prophecy, but Logan's the one who's ahead on board. I mean, it's a 1-2 versus, a Chariot and a bunch of small creatures right now.
And I think Logan got pretty rewarded, because seeing a Showdown on the other side when you already have a Chariot in play and you have a Crowan War double Fire Prophecy, you're just not that worried about Yonn's follow-up plays after that Showdown. And even the second Chariot's just going to really put the pressure onto Yonn, leaving Logan the opportunity next turn to probably deploy multiple removal spells, including Giant Killer. So a lot of really good forward momentum here for Logan, and I really like his position here.
Yeah, we've seen this line as well. One of the disadvantages to cards like Isika's Chariot normally is that it's a legendary card and extra copies would be redundant. But that is simply not the case with the Chariot, as people tend to just play it, sacrifice the freshly cast Chariot, and use the 2 new cats to jump in the Chariot that was already there. You're developing your board, and you're enabling the other 2 cats to attack as well. It just, the legendary downside on that just isn't a thing.
It's part of the reason you're seeing 4 copies, 3 copies in a lot of these decks is just not bad to draw multiple Chariots.
Right.
And so here, Yonn Morris Merkel is going to be able to play a couple things, get some counters off Showdown, but I just don't see a way to really stabilize the board, because these decks are so good at playing against removal. It's part of the reason we're not seeing that much in the way of control in the field, right? Is all of these decks are so resistant. Like the Chariot's not even a creature most of the time, and it makes a bunch of tokens. And look, Fire Prophecy on that Giant Killer, it was a 1-mana play from Logan. It's just
drew him a card.
So slanted in the advantage of the person playing the proactive cards versus the reactive cards.
Wow. Yeah, you mentioned it. Luis Logan being really rewarded for taking that strong stance on turn 4, not trying to play too defensively. And now look at this, 5 cat tokens, still the Chariot, Edgewall Innkeeper, and a Sentinel versus a 2/3 and a 1/1.
And one of the cards that I think Logan might have to worry about is Giant Killer. It's somewhat being represented here, but it's so easy to play around it. Not only could you just attack with all the cats if you wanted to, you can also kick things off by using Fire Prophecy on one of Yonn's creatures, and then that will make it so Yonn has to commit to the Giant Killer or tapping mana right away.
And that's what we're going to see here. Fire Prophecy on the Tangled Florahedron. And that's going to actually, looks like, end the game. Yeah, that's going to be it. Yonn Merkel has to pack him up as Logan Nettles. We talk about that pendulum swinging back and forth, Luis. It never really swung back in Yonn's direction there after Logan hit the Chariot.
Yeah, it's hard when you're on the draw against an opener like that, and it's especially hard if your next play doesn't stop the Chariot from attacking. And like a Lovestruck Beast or another Chariot could maybe get you on the board still. Showdown of the Skulls, as good as the card is, it's not a miracle worker. You do have to have a semblance of a board position for that card to really, kind of give you the fullest potential.
Yeah, we've talked about this in terms of which player can break serve, like who's the first one to stumble. And it turns out that at that juncture in the game on turn 4, Showdown of the Skulls actually is a stumble. Yeah, it's one of the most powerful cards in the deck, but that's not when you want to be casting it. You need to empty out your hand first and then kind of have that card be the last one out. And if you're forced to play it that early in the game where the board doesn't get affected after you tap 4 mana, you can fall way too far behind. And that's what happened there. So Logan Nettles finds himself up a game over his teammate Yonn Merkel, and we're going to see if he can finish things out here in our Eliminator match. We've got one more Eliminator to update you on as well. Once we're done with this one, we'll switch over to that and see how it went. But we're kind of cruising through Sunday here. They're going to be dropping like flies down in the Eliminator bracket.
I mean, it's an interesting spot to be in because, first of all, every player who is playing today has locked up a spot in the Rivals League. So they're all very happy about that to begin with. Mm-hmm. I mean, I know that from talking to some of them. Second, if they manage to go 3-0 from the bottom bracket, they also get Worlds and the MPL. So it's a huge difference, a huge prize. They're very motivated. But when you play a tournament where you have to go 3-0 to get the next step up, losing in the first round, you don't love it, but 3-0 is a tough grind. You don't feel like you almost got there and missed. You do feel like, wow, it was going to be hard to make it today. So we're going to see the tension amp up because once the players are 1-0, then they're only 2 matches away. Once they're 2-0 and playing the rubber match, that's when the tensions are the highest for sure.
Right. All right. Well, a nice little start here for Yonn. Kicks things off with the Yespera Sentinel and then Heart's Desire. Passes the turn back over to Logan.
And given that Logan doesn't have a 4-drop, I would be shocked if he played a Tangled Florahedron this turn. I think it's more, do you want to Bone Crusher Giant the Sentinel, which is a more useful creature, or do you want to perhaps kill the token, which could stop the Lovestruck Beast from attacking?
Yeah, depending on what he wants to do the next turn, right? He has another Bone Crusher, so he does have an answer for the 1/1 to potentially shut off the beast, but is that what he wants to do with his mana the following turn? For now, though, yeah, I'm with you, Luis. Seems like taking out the Sentinel's the right play, and that's exactly what Logan's going to do. He found a target for Stomp, and he's going to use it. Fairly scripted here for Yonn to just play the Lovestruck Beast and get in for 1. That's exactly what he's going to do as he passes the turn back over to Nettles. And Nettles has a decision to make here. And always feels risky to kill the 1/1, doesn't it, Luis? Like, because they could just replace it.
The problem is if you kill the 1/1 and then they have another one, it's like you wasted your time doing basically nothing. But there's also no way to stop that Lovestruck Beast otherwise because you could cast a Bone Crusher and you're guaranteed to get hit. The reason I like the play that Logan made here of casting Bone Crusher, strictly mana efficiency. Playing a 3-drop this turn lets you next turn go Florahedron plus Stomp the 1/1, and that gets you back on board. Again, we're seeing that the player who has Chariot first is at a significant advantage. And even right now, Logan doesn't really have a good answer to what's going on here. Neither the Lovestruck Beast nor the Chariot, as it turns out.
Yeah, he has fallen way behind here. Takes 5 from Lovestruck Beast down to 13. And his hand doesn't have a whole lot going on either.
He doesn't have any of the card advantage mechanisms like Edgewall Innkeeper, Showdown of the Skalds, Chariot. He's in a defensive role, but also doesn't have Giant Killer, which is one of the strongest defensive plays. So the best he can do is play a Florahedron, pass with Stomp Up, and maybe stomp the 1/1 to stop the Lovestruck from attacking, and just kind of cross his fingers and hope he gets to trade Bone Crusher for this Chariot that already got an extra token out of it. And also, unfortunately for Logan, Yonn's hand is Giant Killer and Showdown of the Skalds, two of the best cards in the matchup, especially when you're already ahead. So I think we're going to be seeing a game 3 fairly quickly here. And, I never thought I'd see the day, but we're going to game 3 in a Logan Nettles match within the first 15 minutes.
Yeah, it's actually happening pretty quickly here. Yeah, I want to highlight what you said, Luis, the Showdown of the Skalds and the Giant Killer. I mean, those are the reasons why this deck is Naya and not Gruul. So he's really picked up the awesome stuff here, the kind of premium cards as he adds to his board. Wow, another Lovestruck Beast. That's going to jump in the Chariot. And with the 1/1 generated from it, it means that the Stomp can't shut off the attack from the Beast, so the Chariot gets to come in, and the original Lovestruck Beast is coming in as well.
Yeah, and Yonn playing around pre-combat Stomp pretty nicely. Logan is going to get to prevent the token from being generated by killing the targeted cat, but still, now you trade for Chariot, you take a bunch of damage, and you're very far behind on board, getting really pressured by these pair of Lovestruck Beasts.
And Logan has to just nod his head and say, yeah, you got me here, Yonn, because this one looks way over. 14 power on the other side versus just 1 for Nettles. And what can he add to the board here? A Bone Crusher and a Sentinel? That's like his best case scenario? It's not even close to enough.
And that's even discounting the fact that Yonn is going to use his next turn quite nicely of playing Showdown plus Giant Killer.
All right, well, Logan's going to just go ahead and throw his cards on the battlefield here, but yeah, this is not going to be enough.
I want to highlight another creature. It's not going to matter for this game, but Draenith Magistrate, the card that Yonn's about to play here, is, I think, the best card in the entire matchup. It's a 1/3 that stops your opponent from playing cards that aren't in their hand, which does a number of things. It makes it so you can't get both sides of your adventure creature, because if you play the first half, you just can't cast a creature from outside of it. Mm-hmm. And it shuts down Showdown of the Skalds. You can't cast cards off Showdown of the Skalds either. Plus, if you land that plus an elite Spellbinder, they can't play the card that you Spellbind either, because that's exiled. It's not in your hand. Plus, it's also a 1/3, so it doesn't die to Stomp. It does die to the 4 Fire Prophecies, but if one player has a Draenith Magistrate and the other doesn't, it usually means that the player without one is deeply far behind.
Yeah, it's also nice. It dodges Giant, Chop Down. It dodges Stomp. Like, just a really kind of well-positioned card for the matchup, and a card that they have to have.
I mean, the lock is to put 1/1/1 counter on it with Showdown of the Skalds, because then it can't get Fire Prophesied, Stomped, or Giant Killered. It's actually, at that point, basically invulnerable.
It's perfect stats. Just enough toughness, just not enough power. It's all works out. All right, that is game number 2, going to Yonn Moritz Merkel as he picks up the victory there. And you kind of saw the resignation on Logan's face there about a turn and a half ago, where he said, yep, this one didn't come together. His draw just not giving him what he needed, where Yonn's was really fantastic. It was very similar to the first game, where one player just got so far ahead there was no coming back.
I really want to highlight how cool it is seeing Yonn Moritz Merkel play here, because when I went to my first Pro Tour in Japan, my 3rd Pro Tour ever, it was Kobe 2006 that he ended up winning. And
that's crazy.
I've told you this before. I still have it like ingrained in my memory. The voice of Randy Buehler, going Yonn Moritz Merkel as he wins the Pro Tour. And it was just so cool seeing when Yonn started, really competing at the highest levels again. As this last year and a half, he's just won a ton of tournaments. Between winning the Magic Online Championship Series, between qualifying for the Rivals Gauntlet and the Set Championships. it's just really cool to see that connection. And it just reminds me that, people truly don't stop playing Magic. Like it might go in and out of their lives depending on what's important. But to see the same person who I watched, and was just like, wow, this guy won his first Pro Tour. That's so cool. To come back and now compete for a slot in the World Championship. I just love it.
Yeah, it's fantastic stuff. And right now, Yonn and Logan are facing down elimination, one game to decide who gets to stay in the tournament. We're going to have that for you right after this break. And welcome back to coverage here of the Challenger Gauntlet. We're on Sunday. These are eliminator matches, meaning no wiggle room for our players. And in fact, they've used up all they have. We've got one game left between Logan Nettles and Yonn Moritz Merkel. And, it's going to be one or the other that gets to advance through the tournament, while the other one's going to have to call it a day here. Luis, I would ask you normally about sideboard stuff, but this is a mirror match. They tested together. They seem to have very similar plans based on how they've boarded here.
Yeah, they're basically the same. They took out the 3 Spellbinders, mostly because of a weakness to Stomp and a low curve, and then a couple Mana Dorks for a bunch of removal.
Yep. So that's what we're going to see here. Speaking of Mana Dorks, there is one on the battlefield here for Yonn. But not for Logan, though he does cast first half of Lovestruck Beast here, Heart's Desire. So Lovestruck Beast, one of the key cards in the deck, one of the reasons to play it.
Besides being a very good rate, it also gives you a play on turn 1 and turn 3, which means any hand with a Lovestruck Beast, almost by definition, has a good curve.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we've seen Bone Crusher Giant and Lovestruck Beast. I mean, those have made a massive impact on Standard for their time that they were there. They will not be forgotten anytime soon. Double Jesper Sentinel now for Yonn.
So now Logan has a pretty tough decision. It's similar to the one he had in game 1. He can play the Lovestruck Beast, get onto the board, be the most mana efficient, or he can stomp one of the Aspera Sentinels and make it so Yonn does not have access to 4 mana on turn 3. This time it's closer. I'm curious to see what Logan does, because the first time, getting a Seeker's Chariot out, I mean, I remember saying, the first person to play this is at a huge advantage. Here, a Lovestruck Beast isn't quite as big of an advantage, and stopping an opposing Chariot or Showdown could be a very valuable play. So, interesting to see how Logan approaches this here.
Yeah, I'm really curious to see what Logan does. This is a very close judgment call. And it looks like he's decided to go for the Stomp play here. Speaking of Stomp, Bone Crusher Giant Stomp is going to kill the 1/1 token. Interesting that Logan just passed a turn here as well. He didn't set a stop, right, on Yonn's upkeep.
I think he meant to, because I saw him about to click there, but the reason is it's better to stomp during upkeep than it would be to do it on your turn, just because Yonn could respond by stomping his own creature or something along those lines.
Right. I just, yeah, okay, he was going to. That makes more sense. He seemed to just pass the turn. I thought, well, you got to do one or the other. Here's land number 4, which again is normally a pretty critical spot here for Logan. And he does have a powerful 4-drop with Showdown of the Skulls. But as we've described before, the fact that that doesn't come down and actually affect the board the turn that you play, it's a pretty big liability, especially when, I mean, he's already facing 5 power here just off of kind of a normal curve out here from Yonn.
And so again, Logan is kind of choosing to play, I think, the somewhat inefficient turn of, hey, I'm going to spend all my mana, or not all my mana this turn, but I'm going to make the play that gets something off your side of the board. So what that does though is, because of Yonn drew those Jaspera Sentinels, he's going to get to break serve and be the first person to make a big play, a big 4-drop, despite being on the draw.
That's right. Logan is trying to take a more controlling angle on the game here with Showdown of the Scalds in hand. You know, he probably figures, if I can manage the board of my opponent, I can slam Showdown and take over this game. But right now, he's behind. He's facing down Esika's Chariot, and he has no board state whatsoever at the moment.
Yeah, he's going to be able to make a bunch of plays this turn, but I think that it's still going to be pretty tough for him, because now he's kind of playing catch up, and Yonn is going to be the first person to play Showdown. But you know what? I think despite the first 2 games being just complete landslides, this is heading towards one of the games that we really enjoyed watching yesterday, where both players are getting to just kind of deploy their game plan, and it's not going to be over in a matter of turns.
I like hearing that, Luis. We got some real gems over the course of the weekend in matchups like this. And there's Showdown of the Scalds now hitting battlefield here for Yonn Moritz Merkel, and this is big time. He hits Giant Killer, another Chariot, Burning Hands, and the Drannith Magistrate that we talked about before. Woo, that's a lot of action here for Yonn.
And critically, a land. It would have been pretty unfortunate, or he had a land to play. It would have been pretty unfortunate to miss a land drop the turn you play Showdown.
Mm-hmm. But you're right, he did have one in his hand, and plus the Aspera Sentinel plus a cat allows him to play Drannith Magistrate, Stranding Bonecrusher Giant. But there's Esika's Chariot off the top of the library now for Logan Nettles. So, wow, this mirror match is really playing out in a very mirror match way. The players are going to be casting a lot of the same spells as each other.
Well,
but Logan's a step behind.
Like I mentioned in the preamble, Yonn has that Drannith Magistrate, and I think Logan is just now in a world of pain, because his own Showdown is effectively cut off because of the Magistrate. So now he's in a spot where, yeah, he's going to be able to play a Chariot, but he's not really making forward momentum. Next turn, Yonn's going to get to untap, play multiple things, get counters off the Showdown, get that one counter onto the Drannith Magistrate to get it out of range of Fire Prophecy. That means the game is almost over. Hitting the Drannith Magistrate took this from what looked like a pretty close game to a complete blowout in Yonn's favor.
And you can see it on Logan Nettles' face. He's probably thinking, man, why did I test with you? I shouldn't have told you all my secrets. That Drannith Magistrate putting a huge dent in the game here and making life very difficult for Logan Nettles. He can still play Esika's Chariot this turn, so he has a powerful play. He also has Giant Killer available. But as you mentioned, he has no cards now, right? Showdown of the Scalds doesn't do anything, and the Bonecrusher Giant's kind of on a permanent adventure here. As long as the Magistrate's around, he's going to have to find an answer for it. And now he's, desperate to find a spot removal spell to actually take care of the Magistrate.
The problem is there's not just one that does it now that Yonn has the opportunity to put a +1/+1 counter on it. And I've played Naya in one of the league weekends. I've tested with it quite a bit. You get into this position, and when you're Logan, you feel like you just can't possibly win. It's just your opponent gets access to a bunch of cards that you don't. He can't cast that Bonecrusher Giant out of the Adventure Zone. The Showdown of the Scalds is a +1/+1 counter generating card that doesn't give you enough gas to do it because you can't actually play the cards it exiles. And there's a reason they have these Drannith Magistrates in the sideboard, and it's not for other matchups. It's primarily for this one.
Looks like we're going to see Burning Hands go on the stack here. Is Yonn considering if that last card in hand could be a removal spell here for Nettles, or would he have just fired it off when he had the chance?
Oh, Logan for sure. If it was a fire prophecy, for sure would have done that if he had the chance.
Okay, so Yonn doesn't have to worry about it, and he's actually just going to throw a counter on a cat here, it looks like. And Logan has to decide on tapping something, which he's going to do. Then we're going to see a giant killer in chop down mode on the opposing Love Struck Beast. And boy, the House of Cards is tumbling here for Logan Nettles. Yonn, Moritz, Merkel is taking over this game. And once that counter goes on the Draneth Magistrate, it's going to be here to stay. As we talked about coming into the round here, that perfect stat line of 2-4 just makes it impervious. It can't get chopped down. It can't get prophesied. It's just too difficult to get rid of. You need multiple cards.
The Crone War can nab it for a turn or two and can end up being a way to kill it. So I guess Logan could draw a Crone War. I'm starting to think it's too late anyway, because this turn was cleanup mode. Yonn took all the best permanents off of Logan's side of the battlefield while getting a couple +1/+1 counters for his troubles.
Right. And in comes the Esika's Chariot. This is usually a forced block. You just simply can't allow your opponent to attack you multiple times with the thing. Let's see what Logan decides here. He's in a desperate mode. This is a situation that he never wanted to find himself in. And you can see he's just shaking his head. He knows there's no way out from the current board state.
Yeah, at best, Logan can trade either 2 cats or a chariot for the chariot. He's just so far behind. Like, look at how many resources Logan has. He has 10, 11 cards right now, and Yonn is up like 6 cards, not counting the fact that he's got future +1/+1 counter equity, and the fact that the showdown in Logan's hand doesn't actually do anything.
Right. All right, he's going to trade off the cats, leaving himself with an Esika's Chariot that perhaps could get crewed if he can find a creature off top of the library that could do so. But in the meantime, this was just one of those classic showdown turns where 3 counters got moved around. There's a mountain off the top of the library here for Nettles. And it looks like he's going to pay Gauntlet tax. That's the best he can do. Now, he may feel forced to still just play the Showdown of the Scalds, even with the Magistrate on the battlefield here, Luis.
Yeah, because it will have the ability next turn to start generating +1/+1 counters. So Logan's not giving up. You know, you gotta respect the fight. But
he even tried to fight Arena there.
Yeah, just you might as well check.
A little check there just to make sure. In this case, no, that giant killer is stuck in the exile mode thanks to the Draneth Magistrate, as will all the other cards you see there. And it's really tough for Logan because that was a pretty nice hit. He found a Love Struck Beast, a giant killer, an Innkeeper. He has the Bone Crusher on an Adventure, but as you can see, his board state has dwindled to nothing at this point, and the hits, they keep on coming here for Yonn, Moritz, Merkel as he adds more and more power to the board. What is he at? 4, 7, 10, 12, 13, 14 off of this. I think maybe 13. So he's going to knock him down to 2, but that should be GG here. And there's a concession. Yonn, Moritz, Merkel picks up the victory over his teammate and the champion of this deck, Logan Nettles, to advance and knock out Logan from the Eliminator matches.